Do you have a few minutes?
I gotta make some changes in my life. Do you even realize what your life means?
Morning Cup of Joe, a Missouri S&T podcast using pop culture to destigmatize mental health.
Fake laugh, hiding real pain.
Do not self-destruct.
I didn't ask for this to happen.
Join us in using everyday examples to explain usable techniques to help improve your mental well-being.
Stay a while and listen.
Welcome back, minors. My name is Tracy Kriegel, and I'm a counselor here at Student Wellbeing.
And my name is Amber Johnston, and I'm also a counselor here in Student Wellbeing. And it's time for your Morning Cup of Joe. This morning, I wanted to talk about loneliness. I think we got a lot of students here who battle with feelings of loneliness, especially our freshmen. It can be really hard to acclimate to a new environment, far from home, and sometimes the culture is vastly different from what we're used to. And it can be overwhelming, especially for those of us who are more introverted.
I totally agree with you, Amber. And I also, want to add that our international students who've transferred from other countries especially experience this loneliness. I hear that so frequently. They've come from other countries, India, Ghana, other countries from around the world, and they so often feel homesick, feel lonely for their own country. So sometimes you can feel alone even when you're surrounded by people, because they come over, they're working with their fellow graduates, they're working with other students, and even sometimes people, they come here with people from their own homeland, or they come from schools, their own high school students, but they still feel so lonely.
Mm-hmm. It can even be more pronounced when we feel like we don't fit in, or if we feel awkward. Mm-hmm. I thought a good example of this would be the popular series The Witcher.
Ooh, I believe that's a game, but it's also a book series and a TV series, right?
Yep. Yeah. And assorted other random media as assigned. I am not even sure what all media covers it. It's pretty popular. It was a series that had Henry Cavill in it. Cavill?
Something like that.
I don't know. Anyway. Superman was in it.
Okay, yeah.
And he did a really great job. And they've changed it. I've heard that they cast Liam Hemsworth, Thor's brother.
Okay.
Thor's brother. I think they've cast him to replace Henry Cavill in it. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see how the new season looks.
Nice.
But it was a book series back in the 90s, and I think it's still running. I know there's been some more recent books published. Overall, there are big themes in this book, or the series, about loneliness, not fitting in, feeling isolated from other people. But to illustrate what we're talking about, I really want to focus on the main character, Geralt. And like a typical episodes, it isn't necessary to have seen the series to get something from this episode, and we'll endeavor not to spoil anything. Most of what we're going to be talking about here will be, of course, again, backstory, motivations of a character, and how those motivations play out as the story develops.
All right, so let's dive in. So Geralt is the main character of The Witcher. He's a supernatural monster hunter called a Witcher. Mm-hmm. According to the canon, the Witchers were people, typically orphans, forced to undergo extensive physical and magical training in order to become elite superhuman monster killers.
Yeah. And they look different, so you've got to, first of all, know that Witchers are identifiable by sight. So they have the white hair, they have the yellowish, amber-colored eyes.
Mm-hmm.
In They risk their lives to become a witcher. Most of them die in the process during something they call the trial of the grasses. And essentially, they give up the chance of ever having a normal life. They get cat-like eyes, superhuman strength, an impressively long lifespan, and they give up their ability to ever have children. The process actually makes them sterile. Geralt endured the trial of the grasses better than most and was gifted, like, insert sarcasm here, with even more abilities, and as a result, his appearance is even more different than other witchers with pale skin, white hair kind of guy. But over time, what was initially created to be a hero class of people began to be treated like a monster in and of themselves. Geralt, standing out even more than your average witcher, would be even more rejected. And the people don't need him as much, and there's not as many monsters around. It's kind of like they're hurt by their own success. And so he's basically become a reminder of things they don't want to think about anymore.
Right. So the success the witchers have ensures that monsters are more and more rare, which makes the witches less and less necessary. And as a result, average people begin to see them with suspicion and disdain. So they get called monsters themselves and are often rejected by average people.
Right.
They look different. They have strange magical abilities, and people tend to fear what they don't understand, and the witchers are no different.
Right. They're left with a pretty lonely existence. They're used for their skills when they're needed. Like, you call them in, there's a monster that needs to be hunted. They hunt the monster, and then they, get out of town. We don't need you anymore. But nobody wants them around for the rest of the time. This is where the story pretty much starts. Although some extent the books kind of jump back and forth. But what we have is this man with superhuman powers. All accounts, he should be a hero, but he's kind of like reviled. He's shunned. He wanders from place to place, saving people and trying to earn enough to survive. He's unappreciated, and he essentially has little chances of ever living any kind of normal life.
I think for me, the most interesting part of how we can identify with Geralt is how he's surrounded by people, but he doesn't feel accepted. Mm-hmm. It's like they want him for what he does for them instead of actually valuing his presence.
Yeah, nobody's trying to get to know him. Nobody's trying to appreciate him as a person. It's kind of like, oh, we're going to call you in and we're going to be appreciative because we want you to kill this monster. But after you kill this monster, could you please leave? You're scaring our children. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people feel this way, at least sometimes. Most people are looking for a connection, which is why we can feel lonely in a group of people. If we feel disconnected, it feels like other people don't want to actually get to know us or want us around for any more than they need us. That's the difference between being alone and feeling lonely.
Right, and I think he feels misunderstood. And people who feel lonely often feel the same way, like no one understands them or wants to. Mm-hmm.
But let's look at how he deals with those feelings. Geralt finds a small group of people that truly accept him and value him. And Jaskier is a bard who sings songs about the Witcher and encourages him to others to appreciate him. It's like, Casatoin, you're a Witcher. Yeah, like he also finds connections with others who are lonely like himself, Yennefer and Ciri and the other Witchers.
He doesn't have a huge social group, but his group enables him to feel connected. They make him feel valued and connected, and they seek to know him and spend time with him.
So how does this apply to our students?
Well, if we feel different and rejected for whatever reason, we should seek others who have similar backgrounds and experiences to connect. There are people we identify with and that we feel understand us. We might have shared life experiences or similar interests. This can be others from the same country as we are, or people who share a hobby that we share. They're joining different groups or clubs. Doing so gives us easy means for connection that can develop into a deeper connection over time and exposure. So if we're looking for, people who are similar to us, we might join that club. Mm-hmm. So like if you like rock climbing, you might join the rock climbing club, or if you like photography, you might join the photography club. So, there's all kinds of things that are happening on this campus. I think, what is there? There are like close to 500 clubs, organizations?
I don't even know. There's so many.
There's tons of them. There's some that aren't registered, so the number is hard to count now.
Right.
But the amount that's registered, those are on that, But if you don't know what's available, you can always find a peer involvement advisor and they can help you connect. But it's connecting with like-minded people, and I think that's what he was doing, was connecting with like-minded people.
Yeah, people who shared similar experiences.
Yeah.
And in addition to the groups available on campus, because like there are so many of those, but if you're looking for something and you're not seeing it on campus, there's also a large number of like Facebook groups and other social groups for local areas. Sometimes in the, like if you're from a different town in the state or something like that, you can look up area, clubs and groups for that area. You can look up clubs and groups locally. You can even check out your local library or civic center. There's generally something going on all the time. And you check out local sports groups. I know here in Rollo there's a pickleball team that goes through the Parks and Rec department. I know we've got a roller derby team.
So cool. They were at the St. Pat's Parade this year.
The roller derby team
They were so fun, up and down the street. And they were zooming by and doing really cool things. So that was really neat to
I
see.
was in the back. I couldn't see. I'm short.
Short girl status.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The kids were all up at the front so they could see, and then there were people behind them. So I was like, I'm just going to stand and watch my child's feet. So I didn't see them, but I was there.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. So, I mean, just like-minded activities, people to engage with. Yeah. So, but, there's also I think there's a Meetup. So, yeah, those
Meetup Meetup is a great app. It's basically you go into it and it's got different clubs and organizations in a local area that you can connect with. So if you looked up in Meetup for let's say St. Louis, there's literally hundreds of different clubs and organizations, from vintage films to camping and hiking to you name it, it's there. I actually met a D&D group through Meetup a few years ago, and it's got a bunch of other different things that you can find. I mean, there's always something going on in there. I think the one for the Raleigh area is a little bit smaller, but like I said, that's where I met one of my last D&D groups was through there. Sometimes you can form connections with others online as well. If you're into D&D, there's D&D Beyond usually has message boards with people looking for games and stuff. But sometimes if you're meeting people online, it's not enough, and it makes you feel more lonely because you want to have that human connection in person. But it avoids us feeling completely alone. And there's lots of groups on apps like Discord that can help you connect in some ways, book clubs and different things.
Well, and I think, here on campus, all these different individual groups and organizations can help you get involved because they have Discord groups.
Yes.
So if you're anxious about trying to join a club or organization, you can join their Discord group to kind of hear the chatter within the group and get familiar with the group and organization, kind of just hear what's going on. You can ask questions and kind of get involved in the club, or the organization ahead of time, to where you can kind of get familiar with what's going on too. So.
Right. And sometimes it might be I don't feel confident enough to even post anything to begin with, but I'm just sitting there and I'm watching the conversation go back and forth, and I can see the dynamic of the group and decide if that's something I want to be part of. And sometimes that can give us a little bit of courage because we can start to feel like we know the people in the group. And then when we go to the group, we already know what the people are like. We already know what it's going to kind of feel like. We know the personalities, this person's louder, or this person's quieter. It gives us an idea. Make it a little less intimidating.
Right.
And we can also foster connections with people we meet through our daily lives. Reaching out to friends and family at home, we can engage in small talk with people in classes, or even people who live near us in the dorms.
Right. And remember, most of this will not lead to a lasting friendship, but some of them will. And some, just because you spoke to someone and nothing happened doesn't mean that it's not worth nothing, or that you won't ever form a connection. People can be open to connecting with others, and others won't be. It's not the end of the world just because it didn't turn into a long-lasting friendship forever relationship. So.
Right. We talk about bids for connection. And so when we go and talk to somebody, even if we're asking about the weather, we're sending out a bid for connection. Does that connection have to be long lasting? No. But eventually, if we keep casting our net out, eventually we're going to catch a long lasting connection. But most of what we're going to catch is going to be a lot of short term interactions.
Right. And, I think that this is a prime time to mention this. Here on campus, we have what's called Project Connect. And when people are having difficulty with learning to connect, they can join Project Connect. And you can go onto the Wellbeing website, and for people who they're having trouble connecting, they can join that Project Connect. And it's led by students. It's a student-led organization. And it's a 6-week class, right? A 6-week group. And that student-led organization, they just fosters connection through casual conversations, getting to know each other. And then at the end of that 6 week, they do a planned activity together. And it's just, if you have a hard time leading a conversation, the peer leader leads the conversations. They have fun, thought-provoking conversations, and it helps you connect with a peer, and that may be a lasting relationship. And so they have them over in TJ Hall, and then they have them here at the Student Wellbeing Office. And they're trying to, I think, get one done maybe next semester over in RC as well. So, yeah, I think so. I don't know if it's not set in stone yet, but I think that's on the inner workings of starting in 2004, probably fall of 2004. So that's in
2024.
2024. What did I say? 2004? Boy, I'm way behind times. So yeah, I think they're looking at maybe fall of 2024. So hopefully that'll happen. So
fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, right? Yeah. So they're looking at that. So.
We also have a social anxiety group.
Yes.
So if you feel anxious about social situations or knowing how to talk, or you feel a little bit anxiety about social, interactions, like we have a group. It's ran by one of the counselors up there. It is a fantastic group. It's a closed group, which means that you have to enter it at the beginning of the semester. It's ran every single semester, and when you enter it, the people that are in it when it starts are going to be the people who are in it for the entire of the semester. Nobody new is going to come in, and that gives you security in knowing that I don't have to worry every week if new faces are going to pop in. I'm going to get to learn these social skills in an environment that feels safer.
Yeah, and that's led by Bethany Quay. And it's social confidence group, and so she teaches you those skills of starting conversations and feeling confident within the conversations, and just being comfortable with a new person.
Yes.
And being able to keep the conversation going. And so it's just a great place so that when you are feeling uncomfortable, you're gaining those confidence skills and decreasing that anxiety. Pinpointing off of that, there's also another group for stopping anxiety. So and that group's an open group that's going on all semester, each semester too. So, and that helps to develop, when you're trying to find lasting relationships, it helps you to stop that anxiety as well. So there's a lot of, resources in learning to connect with people, and so, I think there's just a lot of things that we can learn from and foster in creating those connections here on this campus. So, yeah.
So even though we might feel like Gerald sometimes, the reason these kinds of stories are successful is because most of us feel like this sometimes. And it's easy to identify with. And knowing that many of the people that you see every day are struggling with feelings that are similar to this, that feeling of alone, feeling awkward, feeling disconnected. A lot of people feel that way. And also looking for connection can give us comfort and make it easier to reach out.
Right. And if we understand that it's just because someone doesn't engage fully, it's not a rejection. It can be a variety of reasons. It could even be anxiety or fear of rejection on the other person's side. And most often has nothing to do with you. So if we want to make a show reference, Yennefer is a good example. She wanted to connect but struggled to trust others. So when others tried to connect with her, she often turned away or didn't trust them. That wasn't their fault, right?
No.
Yeah.
It was, and that's what we've got to remember when we're making a bid for connection. We aren't necessarily, them not returning that bid isn't necessarily a rejection of us personally. Oftentimes it has to do with where that person's mental health is, where they're at the time. They may be busy. They may have their head in the test that they just took, and they may not be in a place. And that doesn't mean that they're rejecting us.
Right.
They're just saying, right now I can't return this bid for connection.
Right, exactly. I always tell people a lot of times, because I deal with anxiety a lot for people. And so making eye contact can always feel sometimes like you're being very vulnerable. And so if you're scared to make eye contact, challenge yourself. Give yourself this challenge and give yourself permission to make eye contact. Give yourself permission to say hi to someone. And don't be afraid to ask the question, hi, how are you today? What did you think about class? Or did you understand what the teacher just talked about? Do you find the material difficult? Do you know if there's a study group happening?
Right.
Have casual conversations, and if the person ignores you, maybe that's not the right person to sit by. Choose a different place to sit in the classroom.
Well, and if you're intimidated, like it feels like too much to talk to somebody in your class, sometimes starting with a conversation, like when I do a lot of what's called in vivo, which is an in-person, like gradual exposure therapy. And so when we do that and somebody's got a fear of talking to people in public, typically what we'll start with is I want, like this week I'm going to start conversations with people that I'm not looking for friendship with.
Right.
People that may be excluded from what my idea of friendship would be by they're significantly older than me, or they're, there's something about them that I am not, they're not in my target demographic of who I would be seeking to have a close connection with. So what I can do is start a conversation with them, because then I don't have any pressure for wanting that conversation to go anywhere, for it to form any kind of lasting relationship. And I start there and maybe have a conversation about the weather, or I have a conversation about the broken elevator, or I have a conversation about like whatever happens to be in the situation that I'm in. But I've taken the pressure off myself, because my interaction I know is not going to lead to a lasting friendship. It's going to be this situation and this situation only.
Right. I'm trying to remember what the name of the book is. There's a book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie.
Yeah.
He's had that book out for quite a few years. I mean, long time. It was probably back in the 70s when the book probably initially first published. But one of the things I think he references, if I'm quoting this correctly, he referenced is, if you want a conversation, have a conversation with somebody, talk to them about them. And so that's true. So when you're struggling for trying to figure out what to talk about, ask people questions about them. Where are you from?
Those are great shoes. Where did you get those?
Right. So ask them questions about them. Do you have animals? Where do you, where'd you go? Or talk about, what was your favorite subject in high school? Do you like ice cream?
Right.
Tell me more about, are you going somewhere for spring break? And some people say, well, I'm afraid I'm being nosy.
As long as we don't ask invasive questions, like super invasive questions,
Right.
people tend to like to talk about themselves.
They do like to talk about themselves. You're right. And it's just a way of getting to know people. So, like, if you're a video gamer, what would you ask questions? Do you play Skyrim, or do you tell me some RPG games? Like, because I'm not an RPG player. I'm not even a video gamer. But my son, because he plays all kinds of video games, he would be on top of that. So if somebody had questions for him about video games, he's going to have a casual conversations about that. So, like, what kind of mouse do you have? What kind of laptop do you have? So if you're into nuclear engineering, or you're into geology or biomedical sciences, or you're into chemistry, ask them questions about their field they're in. So what's your favorite class do you take? Do you have a favorite professor on campus? What classes would you recommend taking? What classes would you recommend not taking? Do you have a favorite professor you've taken? Is there a professor I should avoid taking? These are some easy questions you can ask people, Those are things you ask people because they can give you information.
Well, and take cues off of the things in their environment.
Right.
So if you're sitting in class and you look over and you see somebody's got a pin from a game that you've played, oh boy, there's a talking point right there. Oh, that's an awesome pin. Like, have you played the new blah, 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 blah? And then you're off on a conversation.
Right.
And that's when you're looking to start a conversation, pull in those commonalities. People wear things about them, clues about them, all over themselves. And we don't even realize we're doing it. Even if somebody doesn't have any fandom stuff on them at all, there are cues to their personality in the way that they dress and the how they choose to wear their hair, like all of that. And so look at them and say, okay, what do I know about this person based on what I can see? Maybe this person's got a I love physics sticker on their backpack. Well then
Yeah. What do they love about physics? Do they have a favorite subject within it? Or did they ever go to a physics camp? Tell me more about that. Tell me more about what got you into physics. And people have a backstory.
yeah.
Where do you see yourself going with physics? And if the person goes, I don't have a clue. Most people have some sort of clue, and explore.
Yeah.
Explore. That's what I always say. And I'm Miss Chatty Cathy. I don't ever meet a stranger. My husband will tell you this. I don't meet a stranger. But I have random conversations with people all over the place. When we travel, I can talk to anybody. Like the last vacation that we went on, we were in, where were we at? We were at Old Faithful in Yellowstone Park, and we met strangers at the ice cream bar. And believe it or not, we had people we knew in common. And we were standing at line at the ice cream bar, and I just started talking to them. And I was like, how are you doing today? And he goes, oh my gosh, it's so hot outside, blah, 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 blah. And I go, oh, I think it's just wonderful here. And I go, where are you guys from? And he told us where we're from, and he goes, well, we're camping. And I said, oh, we're traveling. And he goes, well, where are you from? And I said, well, we're from Cuba, Missouri. And he goes, well, we're from here, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, oh, I know some people from there. And I go, well, I know some people from there. And then just the conversation went on. He goes, oh my goodness, I can't believe we know people from the same place, and blah, 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 blah. And he goes, this is my wife, and this is my children. I said, well, this is my husband, and this is my children. And it was like we knew each other for decades.
Yeah. It's amazing how that happens.
And so this is that place where you just have that open conversation and you just talk to people. And I know people on this podcast are sitting here going, what? I don't know how to do that.
But let's ask. Let's explore the anxiety for a second. What if they hadn't responded? What if you said, like, hey, it's hot out today, and then the other person would have looked at you like you with three heads? What happens then?
For me, I take that cue that the other person isn't comfortable talking. And so I'm okay not pushing someone to talk to me. And I'm okay with that.
Right. Because it doesn't have anything to do with you.
It doesn't have anything to do with me. That's right.
Right.
So I don't personalize that. And that's that piece. Personalization is a cognitive distortion. And so I don't have to own someone else's emotion. And so that's a key for people, is learning that we don't have to own someone's emotions. We don't have to own someone else's thoughts. And so if someone's receptive to having a conversation with us, we take that as that cue that, hey, I've just met someone who's receptive to having a conversation. That's a win-win. And so this is that cue for people. How do we learn to navigate? Our top of the hour was loneliness, right?
Yeah.
And so we are lonely a lot of times because we haven't met those people to make those connections with. And so a lot of times we have to just put ourselves out there. And this is so hard.
It is.
We live in an isolated world, really.
Right.
Since COVID especially.
But here's the thing. People are eager to talk if you give them the opportunity.
We are.
They are. If you give and put yourself out there a little bit, you'd be surprised how much people respond to it. Like I used to travel a lot when I was a kid, and I met so many people that were so interesting. I was was sitting on a plane, and I was, 12 years old, and I was sitting on a plane next to the coach of the men's U.S. wrestling team.
Neat.
And so we talked about wrestling. Did I have any idea about wrestling? No. Did I ask him about wrestling? Oh, yeah. Like, I asked him all the questions my 11, 12-year-old brain could come up with about wrestling.
That's awesome.
But we sat, and the entire flight, we talked about wrestling. I was traveling by myself, so it was just me. And because he was eager to talk, it was a passion he had. He was eager to talk, and I was eager to listen. And we formed a connection. Did I ever talk to him again? No. Absolutely not. It would not be appropriate for a 40-year-old man to be friends with an 11-year-old. You know?
No, definitely not.
Not an appropriate friendship. But we just had a conversation. We had a connection. And those little connections, those tiny, at the movie Fight Club, have you ever seen Fight Club?
Yes.
He talks about single-serving friends.
Yeah.
And so we've got to go into thinking, okay, this is a single-serving friendship, just like you had. You met somebody at the Yellowstone Park, and you had a single-serving friendship, and then you went on with your life, and you may never connect with that person again. But how many of those, over time, with all of those single-serving friendships that you've had, there have been a handful of them that turned into lasting connection.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I have so many memorable connections like that. Mm-hmm. I had an architectural engineer that I met on a plane to Texas, to San Antonio, Texas, when I started working for Deer Oaks Behavioral Health.
Uh-huh.
This man was fascinating. He built buildings all over the United States, in different parts of the world, and I was in the front of the plane, and I sat next to him. And I sat down next to him. Here I was in my business suit. Here he was in his business suit. And I'm sitting down next to him. He has his newspaper up. Mm-hmm. And he had his headphones on. He took his headphones off. And I said, "How are you today?" And he goes, "Oh, how are you today?" And he goes, "I expected this flight to be really boring." And I go, "Why is that?" He goes, "I never get to sit on a plane that anybody ever talks." And I said, "Well, I hope you're pleasantly surprised." I said, "Because I love to talk to people." And he was like, we talked all the way to San Antonio. Uh-huh. He was fascinating. I mean, he talked about all the buildings he had built all over the world, the different people he had worked for, companies. I wish I could remember where he went to school at, but absolutely a fascinating person.
Uh-huh.
But he's somebody who sticks out in my mind. Another person who sticks out in my mind, this guy whose name was Jerry Morano.
Uh-huh.
He owned 5 McDonald's in Brooklyn and down in New Jersey.
Right.
We met him on our honeymoon,
uh-huh.
my husband and I. And he was on a boat, and he video cameraed, this is so funny, us parasailing.
Oh, wow.
And he sticks out in my mind because we met him, talked to him, and he videoed my husband and I parasailing. He took enough time to send us the video.
Uh-huh.
Because, that time there was no such things as cameras.
Yeah,
iPhones did not exist back then yet. And he sent the VHS tape to us, which I still own, believe it or not. He sent that to us and said, "Congratulations on your wedding. If you ever make it to Brooklyn, look me up."
Right.
Those are connections that you make just by stepping out of your box,
uh-huh.
talking to people. And my husband and I kind of felt a little bit isolated and alone because we didn't know anybody where we were. We were down the Florida Keys. We were in a strange world, still in the United States, but it felt like a really kind of strange world because mm-hmm. people were kind of isolated and alone. And these people who were on the boat with us, we started talking to them, and we made them a part of our space and time. Mm-hmm. And it was Jerry Morano, his son, and his 2 grandkids.
Yeah, wow.
And this was back in 1995. This was May of 1995.
Wow.
And I still remember them.
Mm-hmm.
People, I don't remember their names that I met yesterday, but I still remember his name because he made such an impact on my life because it was so kind.
Well, Well, and sometimes those connections can become lasting connections. Like you become friends with somebody and then they stick around and you're friends with them for years. Like I had one of my best friends in high school. I always joke, I met him because he poked me with a pencil in French class.
Right.
Like it was just like I'm literally sitting in the front row. I just moved to the school, didn't know anybody, and then this kid poked me with a pencil and asked me how to pronounce a word, and then we became really close friends, and then I became friends with his friends, and I'm still with that friend group, and here it is,
Yeah.
an embarrassing number of years later. So, and I still have people with that group that I associate with, but it all started because he poked me with a pencil and asked me how to pronounce a word.
Right. But those are those lasting moments that make impressions for you. And so you make a connection. And I think that's that piece that we still step outside our box and you be vulnerable and you be willing to say, hey, how are you doing today? My name's so-and-so. Here's where I'm from. Where are you from?
Yeah.
What do you like to do? It's starting with some of those basic conversation skills and being willing to just take that few steps further.
Right. And every time you do it, it gets a little easier. The first couple times it's really embarrassing. But then, like you said, you start learning that it's not always about somebody's rejection of you. A lot of times it's about what's going on in their head.
Right,
It
exactly.
has absolutely nothing to do with you.
Right. Yep, absolutely. So I think, we brought up some really great points, but I think hopefully students and people listening, if you're a Missouri S&T student and you're struggling with connections, just know that we're here. We're always here to help. We mentioned, some different solutions and help groups, but if you need individual counseling, if you want to take it, a step further and want some other assistance, please know that you can go on to your student health portal and schedule an individual counseling screening. That's always available to you. You can call over to the student wellbeing office and someone will help you that way direction, or you can send us an email at wellbeing at mst.edu. Or if you're in the community and you need help finding a counselor, locating a counselor, you can look on the back of your insurance card. Somebody at your health plan will help you find a counselor. You can go to psychologytoday.com and find a counselor. There are resources available to you. If you're a student here at Student Wellbeing, your health fees pay for your counseling for free. So please reach out to us today. We want to help you.
The help is there. We're here. We can help. So,
Absolutely.
thanks for joining us this week, and we will see you next week.
Take care. If you like this podcast, please remember to like and subscribe. To schedule an appointment or to reach out to us about future topics you would like to see, please email us at wellbeing@mst.edu. You can also reach us by phone at 573-341-4211. We are located at 204 Norwood Hall.
I accept the challenge.
Get out there and do your best!
Hey, go easy on yourself. Come on now.
Now you're talking!
For more mental health and well-being content, please follow us on Facebook at Missouri S&T Wellbeing and on Instagram at S&T Wellbeing.
But most importantly,
never give up.